So I know you're probably thinking I'm crazy right about now, thinking about gardening. But you'd be wrong, because right now is actually the perfect time to start planning your spring garden. Yeah, it's only the second weekend in January, and there's a foot of snow on the ground. But now is the time to be ordering your seeds, and now is the time to be plotting out where you want to put all of your vegetables in your garden. So come on inside where it's not snowing, and we'll talk a little bit more about our garden plan for this year and where you can get some seeds and what you should be thinking about starting in the greenhouse and when.
All right, now that we're in out of the snow and in by the stove where it's warm, we want to talk to you a little bit about some of the seeds we plan on planting and why, and some of the issues we're seeing today. So Sue's going to tell you a little bit about what she's finding online.
So recently I went to Baker Creek's website. They're one of the largest heirloom variety seed producers in the country. And they had actually shut down their website for 5 days to allow them to catch up on orders due to the sheer volume of orders that they're receiving. Last year, we did see a shortage of seeds in a lot of areas. In fact, we ended up sending seeds to my mom so that she could plant her garden because we'd gotten our seeds earlier and they weren't available in her area. We expect that this year may be similar, and that some varieties, or even seeds in general, may be a little bit harder to come by than normal. That said, there's some places that you can try that you may not have thought of for buying your seeds. Your local farm store is always a great resource. Along with animal feed, they always carry seeds, potting mix, and other gardening items. You can look through online sources, of course. Sometimes even your local grocery store will have seeds. Another great place to look is on Facebook. You may be able to find a local gardeners group, and they may have seed sharing that they offer through that group as well. Or you may just find some friendly people willing to give you some of what they have. It's a great way to meet new people, to learn about more gardening, and to get the seeds that you need. Knowing what resources are available in your area and what works well with the soil type and climate can be invaluable for getting an actual harvest out of your crop. You can plant a lot of crops and still do poorly if you don't have the right varieties. We like to try some new varieties every year, and this year, when we did our order from Baker Creek, we added a bunch of different things. We'll definitely be planting our tried and true items, but we also have some interesting stuff and some new varieties. We'll go over some of those in a few, but one of the other things that we have done over the years is we've created our garden notebook. And everyone who is gardening should consider doing this. It tells us when we planted and what we planted variety-wise last year, what worked well for us and produced, and what was a failure. And while we may still try planting some of the crops that did poorly last year because every season is different, it means that we can look to the knowledge of the past and shape our garden around that to ensure that we do get a good harvest. So one of the varieties that we're trying this year that we haven't done in the past is the dragon tongue beans. These were recommended by gardener James Prigioni. He has a YouTube channel that we really enjoy following. He talks about his food forest. So rather than having a dedicated garden patch, he's made basically his entire landscape into an area for growing food. He has his tree layers, his bush layers, and then all of his undergrowth is his strawberries, carrots, all your standard garden items. And that's a very interesting concept to us, and that's one that we've tried to practice some here. But he inspired us to try those beans. I also found these purple beans that I thought looked like a very interesting variety. And we'll plant our tried and true same green beans that we planted last year as well. When you're looking into your seeds, You can do what we've done, which is go with a large variety of heirloom seeds for this coming year. But in past years, we've also just gone to the store and gotten the regular varieties. The difference between just buying the regular seeds from Walmart or your grocery store or your farm store and buying the heirloom seeds is the heirloom seeds are designed to produce a variety of plant from in a consistent manner. So when you save those seeds from year to year, you can expect to get the same plant, whereas you can't expect that with the other seeds. You may get something that's nothing like the parent plant that you took the seed from, or it may not germinate at all. So you can certainly always try saving seeds. It's great practice to see if you can get them to sprout, and sometimes you might get something fun, but don't count on the results being identical when you use seeds that are not an heirloom variety.
So as Sue mentioned, you may always buy your seeds from Baker Creek, for example, and that may be what you do. You may start looking now and realize it's too late. You can't find, they don't have what you want, or it's going to get here too late. Well, we're not trying to tell you that there's not going to be any seeds to be had, as much as we're telling you they may not be available in the timeline that you're expecting you would normally get them. A good example of that is it's the second, maybe third week of January here. We're on like the 21st, if I remember right, today. You'll see this in a few days. Our local feed store here in central Maine is talking about getting their seeds in any time now. We can't plant seeds for probably another 3 months, maybe 4 months.
3 for the greenhouse and 4+ for direct sow into the garden, depending on the varieties.
So, you look at that and they're planning ahead, as should you. Go look at your normal channels like that, but also, don't be afraid to grab some seeds at Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, grocery store. It's still something, it's still something you can plant. You may not be able to get the particular, variety of basil, for example, that you want, but you can get something similar. And that holds true. We're seeing that a lot on a large scale with everything. Our local feed store, for example, the lady that manages the front end of the store, the customer facing side of things, she saw some of this coming last year, and she was able to stock up on canning jars and supplies. And we were able to actually get some product at our local feed store. So, don't just give up if you can't find them online. Do a little looking around. It's a strange time that we're in really right now with everything. Some things seem to be not available at all at certain times, and then there's a plethora of it. So, yeah, I think to add to that what Sue was saying, just look around. Don't be afraid to branch out and buy some extra. And don't be afraid to try things. Last year, for example, we harvested our potatoes out of a raised bed, and Sue said, "Hey, I wonder if we've got time for green beans." And she looked at the calendar and said, "Well, if everything holds true and we don't get our frost until such and such a date, we should actually get some green beans off this." And we tried that, and we documented that all in our binder, like she said. And we actually did get several crops of green beans off that before the frost hit. Now, we could have got an early frost. We could have lost that whole bed of green beans. But at the end of the day, I think the package of seeds cost us maybe $1. So what do you have to lose? I think, as Sue has mentioned, you want to plant what you know is going to do well, what you can rely on, what you can put away for the upcoming winter, but you also want to have a little fun with it. I mean, the thing that I encourage is that everybody can garden to some extent. You don't need thousands of acres of land. You might live in an apartment building, you might live second, third story, and you've got a little balcony. Put a couple little pots out there, a little container garden, some vertical growing. You can be pretty, you can experiment a lot with this and have a lot of fun with it. The real key here is to have fun with this. I mean, if you're gardening and it's work and it's a chore and you're not enjoying it, you're not going to take care of the garden like you need to, and it really should be a relaxing thing to go do. So.
Like Ryan said, get creative, have fun with it. That will keep you gardening, and it'll get you wanting to expand your garden. That and having all the delicious things that you get to eat out of it.
Yeah, I think, have a little fun. The other thing, and we'll try to put a link to maybe James's channel down below, but the food forest concept for us is really cool. We're planting a lot of perennials, fruit trees, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, those type of things. We're on a fairly small parcel of land. Well, small, large, it's all relative, right? We're on a little over 4 acres of property here, and one of the fun things that we're doing is putting areas of this. So if you walk out to the chickens, for example, you're going to find some raspberries behind the chickens. You're going to find a few fruit trees. You may find a blueberry bush once the spring rolls around. Different areas of the property, we're trying to put a little something there. So if you're wandering around, you can just sit down on a bench, grab a handful of berries, or apple off the tree, kind of have some fun with it.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about when you want to plant your seeds. Obviously, we have a short growing season here, and so we have to utilize our greenhouse. Many of the plants that we have need to be planted 8, even 10 weeks prior to our last frost. So what we'll do is start a lot of our tomatoes and peppers and other sensitive plants indoors, and we'll keep them in until they sprout, and then we'll move them out to the greenhouse. And the reason that we'll wait is because we're going to have to heat the greenhouse once we put those starts out there, because just the greenhouse alone won't do it in the early season for us. They would still freeze and die. But we'll start those, like I said, 8 to 10 weeks prior to our last frost. Then you have other plants like other plants like carrots and peas and beets that can be direct sown into the garden very early. In fact, basically right as soon as you can work the soil. So we'll plant those in probably late April, maybe even mid-April, depending on what the weather's looking like. And that's a good place to take a risk. Plant early. All you're going to lose is some of your seed starts, and you have so much to gain. You can be harvesting peas by 4th of July if you start them early enough here. And that may not sound like a lot if you're from a warmer climate, but trust me, up here where it's snowy and cold, July peas is kind of a big deal. So do push the boundaries a little bit, but be ready to start a second crop. The seeds are cheap, but running out of seeds and not being able to plant a garden would definitely be a disappointment. So stock up on them, get some extra varieties, and make sure that you're putting them in the ground early, but be prepared to lose the first bit of the crop and go ahead and plant a second planting. It's always good to hedge your bets.
So we can have a late frost in the spring or an early frost in the fall. Last year we had that happen in the spring, and we ended up covering a lot of our raised beds just for the night to get through that frost. And if you do, like what we found actually, soda bottles, beer bottles, wooden stakes, as long as you keep like a tarp or whatever from touching the plant, it'll go through a pretty darn cold snap in the night and not hurt the plant. The other thing we'll probably do is build some cold frames over some of our beds. We'll bring you along for that, of course. We grow in predominantly all raised beds here just because of the lack of soil. We're on a pretty solid bedrock hill here. So you'll see us working in a lot of raised beds when we start planting this spring. We've done a lot, or we will be doing a lot more with cattle panels and fencing and growing things vertically. When space is a premium, you learn how to work with it. You learn companion planting. That's something we'll talk about as we get going this spring. And then the big thing is, as James will point out, and we'll try to leave a link to his channel, plant a variety, and learn what's disease resistant in your area. You may plant a particular squash, and if that's all you plant and you get a squash bug or something that year and it really loves that one breed and it just devastates it. Whereas if you had 2 or 3 varieties, the one may be more resistant to that, it may not be as tasteful, whatever the case may be. The big thing that I can give you is there isn't failure, there's just education. So any gardener you talk to We'll always have bad years, bad crops. There'll always be stories. And the key there is to learn from that. Learn, what did I do last year? Document it. What do I think I need to do better? Or how can I make that work better for me? So that's the big thing, I think, is keeping notes of what you've done so that you can experiment every year and have something to go back to.
One more thing you can do now, rather than waiting till later, if you're excited to get started on your garden, is to do a garden map. So this shows the basic layout of our raised beds, and it shows a plan for where we intend to plant everything that we have for the garden. And we did go ahead and leave 2 beds blank because we know that there's always that thing that comes up later as you're buying seeds that you're like, I really have to try that. And so it's not that we intend to have an empty bed. I'm quite sure that we won't, but it doesn't have to be every space filled, because trust me, you'll find a way to fill them in.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you'll be walking through the grocery store or your favorite nursery or on your favorite website, and you'll see something like, I like to try that. Or you'll be watching a YouTube channel and you'll see somebody do something and you decide you want to try that. So just, be a little flexible with your plans, but definitely, start thinking about it, laying it out, thinking about, like in our case with the raised beds, we have a fence all the way around it to keep the animals out. And we like to plant things that grow on the fence. So planting the tall things on the backside so the sun still gets in the garden and is not shaded, is kind of important. So those kind of things to think about.
Anything else?
I think that's about it. We encourage you to really, get out, get your hands dirty, have a little fun with it. Don't wait to buy your seeds. Don't wait to buy anything really right now. If you need it and you know you're going to need it and you see it, now is probably the time to get it. If you're walking through the store and you see canning jars and you know you want them, better grab them. Same thing with like meat birds. We're going to process meat birds. We do meat birds every year. Don't wait until the last minute to order them this year. I think you're going to see a lot more people trying to be a little bit more self-sustainable and just maybe know where their food's coming from. It doesn't really matter why you're doing this. If you just want to be able to get away from your computer, more people are working at home. It's easy to get sucked into the computer for 12, 14 hours a day. This way you can say, I'm going to lunch, I'm going to force myself to go out in the garden and garden. Or, if you're worried about the current state of the world and you're afraid there will not be a food supply, or if you just want to know what you're eating. You want to know that you raised that cucumber yourself, that it didn't come from, some other country. You know what's in that cucumber. You didn't feed it a lot of chemicals. Doesn't really matter why you're doing it. The key is to go out and do it, have a little fun. So,
what are you waiting for? Go! Get your seeds now!
And don't plant them until the snow's gone.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.